And the theme for the month, yes, we're going to take our children out. Okay. Have fun with Dr. Arlene. So we'll start again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Interfaith Spiritual Center. We welcome our viewing audience as well. That you just didn't tune in by chance, nor are you here by chance. That we have a divine appointment. And that we heard the call and answered. And there's a lot of times that we hear a call and we don't answer. Because we have a lot of excuses and a lot of things that go on with us. And they look pretty good, you know, in our rational mind. But when we make a decision, and I'm saying that love is more than a choice, it is a decision. And Emerson said, love isn't looking at each other, it's looking together in the same direction and making a decision on our spiritual life. The ground of being, whatever we conceive that God to be, whatever name we put on it, but to know that which is within us is greater than that which resides in the outer world of conditions, appearances, and effects. We are all on our path. We are learning. We are growing. We are unfolding. We have things that come in that we get to deal with in our bodies, in our finances, in our relationships. These things come in. And when we have a spiritual ground of being, we deal with them differently. We deal with them in a kind of peace that passes all understanding of how we ever did it before. This is what I love about our way of life. Because if our reach exceeds our grasp, what's a heaven for? That we are growing and we are unfolding. And when we allow ourselves to grow and to transform, and I believe that's why we're here. We are here to grow and unfold every single day of our lives, to open our awareness, to open our consciousness, and to make that decision for our life. I recently saw an interview with Byron Katie, who has very, very prolifically got such a following with the work. She calls what she does the work. And in this interview, she was talking about her book, Accepting What Is. See, that we scream and we gnash our teeth and, do all this stuff because we don't want to accept what is at that moment. Not realizing that if I accept what is at this moment, then what do? I release it as well because I'm accepting that this is going on this moment. I may not like it. It may not emotionally feel good at that moment. But to know there is a higher purpose there. And the interviewer said, well, how did you, get to do the work, Byron Katie? And she said, I had a 10-year run of depression. I felt so unworthy that I didn't even sleep in the bed. I slept beside the bed. Nothing worked in my life. It was always outside of myself. It was the kids, it was the husband, it was the mortgage, it was the finances, always out here. She said, I was obese. It was that. She said, there was everything but me. And she said, I was asleep on the floor, and a cockroach walked over my foot. And as I'm observing the cockroach walking over my foot, I got up, and I looked in the mirror, and I saw myself for the very first time. I saw innocence. I saw light. I saw the energy of my own inner child. She said, I got up from that floor, and that little cockroach was at that moment her teacher, got her attention, and she said, something shifted within me, and I began to start this spiritual path by seeing everyone was my reflection. I made a decision that moment to make that shift and to acknowledge the work. And she said, I lived in Barstow, California. Not exactly the destination point of every person, on the planet. But I lived in Barstow. And people saw this amazing change in me. And then I began writing articles, and they start coming and staying at my house. And the publisher of The Light Connection in San Diego, Marlene Martin, Actually, in 1993, she told me, I'm going up to Barstow with a spiritual teacher, and we're all going to stay in her house. And I thought, it's a little crazy, but, let her do her thing. And she said, I came back asking myself 4 questions that she posed. And number 1, if we look at our life, we ask ourselves, is it true? Then we look again, do I know that it's absolutely true? And then we look at it again and say, how do I react to what I believe? And then the 4th is to arise in that awakening and to acknowledge our life. So when we look at the power of decision, that yes, we have all the experiences of one in the human condition, each and every one of us in the human condition. And how we lift ourselves out of that is to know that there is a divine plan, and that each and every one of us is part of that divine plan. And when we recognize that, and we come to that moment in our lives, we make the shift, as Dr. Ted stated earlier, that when he put his foot on a new thought path, he knew that he was home, that there was no judgment out there, that everyone is welcome beyond color, race, creed, or sexual orientation, because our God is a God of oneness. Now, I recently went to see my daughter for a few days. Thank you, Mike, for staying at the house. And we went to the park. And there was all these children, and they were having so much fun. And there was one little guy in particular, and he goes, look at me, look at me. And he got up on the slide, and he was just doing these things. And on the swing, I was pushing little Tyler, and he got on the swing, and he was swinging high, and goes, look at me, look at me. And Tricia said, I wonder where the parents are. And obviously, they just dropped him off at the park, and he was fending his way. I said, wow, look at you. You're going to be at Cirque du Soleil. You're fantastic. And he got up on the real high slide, and he went on down a little tie-tie. He's not 2 yet. He'll be 2 next month. He got up there and climbed up, and he went down. As he was going down, his little head sort of hit, the edge, but that shocked him. But he came on down, and he shook it off, and, had like a little red spot, and he was up. The other little boy was up there, and he goes, you shouldn't have the babies go down the big slide. And my daughter said, I believe that we've just been scolded by a 5-year-old. He said, I'm 6. Oh, by a 6-year-old. And I said, you know what? That's really good information. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And it's so amazing that within this little 6-year-old, who was just, you could see, craving attention, look at me, look at me, look at me, that my daughter said he did choose the right person to say, look at me, look at me, look at me. Because now he's got aspirations of Cirque du Soleil and many other things in his little 6-year-old mind that probably no one ever suggested to him and affirmed him that this is all right, that on some level you too are my child. Because each and every one of us has that wounded child within us, except Alice and Bob, who had fabulous parents. But then you had to deal with the rest of us that were wounded. So it's just interesting how that works, isn't it? So we have this inner child that's been wounded, and I call it the sacred wound. It's the wonder child that is within us. And when I feel scared and fearful and got the human condition going on, I look at myself at 4 years old, and those little eyes, she says to the world, I can do anything. And I look at her, and she gives me my message, and I go forth into life, realizing I really can do anything that I set my mind to. I was given this People magazine, and it has the fight of his life, Michael Douglas. And it says that he was diagnosed with advanced throat cancer, and he said, I spoke my word, I am going to beat this. I had the support of my family, of my wife, of my children. She had like this stiff upper lip and said, we're going to support you through this. There are many. When it's time to go, it's time to go. And the human condition, we do hold on. But he felt that he had other work to do. And he said, I'm going to beat this. This was his affirmation, his declaration. And he said, I look at my dad who had this major stroke. I looked at, my family. And I realize I have so much to offer. And we know that the throat, in Ernest Holmes' Science of Mind textbook, long before anyone else was doing this, he has probable psychological causes in mind. The throat is sadness. When we got stuff going on with our throat, it is sadness. It is the unspoken. This is the power center, the seat between heaven and earth. To speak our word, that which you utter becomes the outer. That's why it's so important that we speak words of affirmation, that we speak words of love, that we speak words that empower, because this is our power center. And that as we speak our word as one having authority, as Jesus the Christ said, then our word is law unto the thing in which it is sent. And to be so mindful, because the truth is the universe just has these great big ears and is always saying yes to everything you utter, because that which we utter becomes the outer. To be so aware of this. This is what we teach. This is part of our movement, that there is a probable psychological cause in mind for everything that we experience, and to grow through what we experience. When my husband passed of cancer, he had a note in his hand. And I took the note out of his hand, and it said, we come into this world alone, we leave alone. This time called life is meant to share. Now, he was 34 years old. I was 32. I never really dreamed that I was going to be a widow. But suddenly I was with a 7-year-old, calling for her daddy. And I said, every single day, we will have a missing daddy session. And every day at 4 o'clock, which was the time he left the planet, we would sit down and have a missing daddy session. We would laugh and we would cry, and he had a great sense of humor. And the missing daddy sessions became less and less and less as we healed. And that the physical presence that wasn't, that was such a big part of our lives, as it drifted into the ethers, where we could suddenly begin, we could stop weeping because it was over. We could begin rejoicing that it happened, that we made a decision to move on in our lives. Elton John and Rolling Stone, I was at the hairdresser yesterday, and I said, oh, Elton John, I love him. I opened it up in great big print. He said, I am the most famous homosexual on the planet. And he said, and I probably annoy all the other homosexuals on the planet, because he sang at somebody's wedding, I guess, who is a known bigot. But we bless him. We don't judge, do we? We just bless him. And the Fiddler on the Roof, when they asked the rabbi, remember they asked, what is your blessing for the czar? Do you have a blessing for the czar? He says, one moment. Oh, yes. May the czar, we bless him, and may he always stay far away from us. So there are certain blessings, And I always say, if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. It's not bad or good, it's just what it is. And he said he annoyed the whole gay community by singing, at this person's wedding. And he said, but this person and all those that feel that way will get to look at us differently, that we're just like them, that we have the same energies, we have the same joys and sorrows and laughter, that we're all together in this human experience. I thought, right on, practicing what you preach and put out there in the universe. Right on. And as we come together to make a decision, and I will challenge each and every one of us that this week, that we don't judge anyone or anything. And the minute you find yourself judging, you get to start over. It's a new day. To do that for 7 days. Not to judge anyone or anything. We can evaluate things if they're working for us or not. But we can acknowledge together that there is a power for good in the universe greater than we are, and we can use it. When I was at Amazing Women's Day, a young woman named Elle, she's just absolutely fabulous. She wrote this little book, and it's called What is Love A to Z? And she had one of her friends illustrate it. And I think this is just the best gift to give anyone. And the illustrations are fantastic. And this young woman in her early 30s, Ellie Fabo, was dropped off at 10 years old at an orphanage because her mother didn't want her anymore. Just dropped her off, she said. And she said, my Nana was in the hospital because she had breast cancer. And she said, I was so scared, but everyone who was nice to me, I made a special note in my heart that they were nice. And she said after a couple of years, her Nana came and got her. And then her stepfather adopted her when she was 17. And that really, she said, he really is my father. And she wrote this book, Love A to Z. Having had this experience, she made a decision through that experience to love. She made a decision that no matter what happens in our life, that I have a choice. And through that choice, I can grieve, and that's appropriate. And then I can make a decision that I'm going to continue, and I'm going to continue being the very best that I know how to be. And there are times that we will lapse and we will judge. I mean, just last Sunday, we were getting in the car, and we had brunch, and there's a really nice man singing, and I'm so used to Fleet, and just love Fleet so much that I said, I looked at Linda and said, he has a terrible voice, but I love his enthusiasm. He's out there, he's out there doing, and Frank is behind me saying, Dr. Sharron. Oh my goodness. And I said, well, I did say I admire his enthusiasm. I did add something, caught, busted, right that minute, So we all have those little moments where we're judging the outer. And the truth is that we open the space to realize that we're all in this thing called life together. Let's make a decision this week. Let's acknowledge our oneness. Let's acknowledge if we don't relate to something that we don't relate to it. Let's acknowledge the little child within us that comes up and says, watch me, watch me. That child is within us all. That child needs to be affirmed within us, as us. And so today, as we make that commitment to move forward, to acknowledge why we are here and what it is that we're given to do. And as we do that, we're going to see something happen so miraculous for ourselves, so beautiful. And I know, I see it. And I go through all the human emotions and experiences and come out on the other side knowing that God is my source. And when we know that, we include that. So this morning, let's just say together, God is my source. Do you believe that?
Yes.
Do you really?
Yes.
Okay, God is my source. One more time. God is my source, in whom I live and move and have my being. Goes before me and prepares the way. I make a decision for life. I make a decision to be a person that's all-inclusive and that truly does love and recognizes there's a unity and diversity and there's a oneness and multiplicity. And I want you to know, I never want to be standing outside singing, because I know my gifts. And singing is not one of them. So it's good to know our gifts as well and bless those that are out there on the line willing to give their gift in the only way they know how, which is to sing their song. God bless you.